would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I live and work, the Gundungurra land, and people. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I also want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which you, our listeners, are joining us from today. I recognise the deep connection that First Nations people have to this land, their enduring culture, and their commitment to the preservation and care for their country. This land was never ceded, and it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Welcome to Beyond the Surface. This is a space for conversations that sit at the edges of faith, identity, power, and recovery, especially for those of us who have been shaped, stretched, or harmed by fundamental religion or high control systems. Some episodes are personal, some are reflective, some are educational or curious, or quietly disruptive. All of them are grounded in lived experience and a deep respect for the complexity of leaving, questioning, and rebuilding meaning. We will be talking about religious trauma, various forms of abuse, cult dynamics, queerness, and recovery, not in neat answers, but in honest conversations. In listening to these conversations, some parts might be heavy or activating for you. Please take care of yourself while listening and feel free to pause or step away if you need to. I'm Sam, and I'm really glad that you're here with us. Welcome, Katie. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Before we kickstart into the conversation, where in the world are you at the moment?
I am in very sunny Denver, Colorado,
Is
USA.
the sunny like are you being ironic? Because like isn't it winter over there?
No, it is winter and we actually have the most sun in the country. We have like over 300
Oh,
days of sun. It's a very beautiful place to live.
oh my good. I'm just like I
Yeah.
automatically thought you were being like sarcastic and ironic because like usually
Yeah.
when like we've had a heat wave this last week pretty much across most of the country. And I
Mm.
thought for sure like you're in winter is cold, but no.
Yeah.
So that's nice.
We get we can get pretty cold. Like we can definitely get in the,
Yeah.
0 degrees. But when it snows, it gets sunny and the snow is usually gone by the afternoon. So
Beautiful.
yeah,
That's
yeah, it's a really great
nice.
place.
Oh,
No, but
beautiful.
there's no humidity, very, very temperate. So
Oh,
nice.
if it wasn't for all of the
Yeah,
rest of the things happening in your nation, that would sound
I
very lovely.
know.
But anyway,
I know.
let's
Yeah.
not completely derail the episode before it even starts. Um, Today's going to be a little bit of a mishmash of things. I think most people are used to either expecting story-based or education insight-based, and we're gonna just like throw that to the wind and just do both in one episode, which will be great. So, before
Mhm.
we sort of like kick straight into that sort of space, tell us, I guess, a little bit about your story and religion and like all of that connection and how you are in the space that you are now.
Yeah, happy to. Thank you. Uh, well, it wasn't a very clean, it's not a very clean and tidy story. I would start with saying.
Yeah.
Takes a while, to sometimes sort out like what is actually happening for yourself. To back up, I grew up in a pretty strict religious environment, pretty rigid, pretty much as strict Roman Catholic as you could get.
Okay.
I'm the fifth of seven children.
Oh,
And yeah, that
a lot of
matters
kids.
because yeah, and that birth order really matters.
Yeah.
And I think that my parents did a great job in terms of like how to like take care of this family and what kind of structure do we give them. And
Mm,
church was the place, that really was like everything, the foundation and all of this, um, the place to grow this family.
yeah.
And I was definitely my personality and my temperament is definitely one that was like probably needed a little more attention than I got, and uh, you know, tried to win a lot of approval.
Mm.
And a lot of these ways in which that kind of setting sets you up to kind of cultivate like perfectionism and people pleasing and all of
And
these
also,
things. I was like, the most
Yeah.
susceptible.
And Catholicism is kind of built on doing the right thing. So that kind of just like
Yes,
feeds the same structure and the same narrative, I imagine.
absolutely. Absolutely. Like it's and then it's so layered, right? It's you're bad from day
Mm.
one, right? And your body is absolutely bad as a
Yes.
female. And so I was just always trying to do the right thing. And it kind of created this like very delayed maturity in a sense. So on the one end, I was extremely independent and very uh, adult very early, like just took, just felt like knew I had to be that, but also like very behind from a developmental standpoint.
Mm.
So I only just realized in the last 10 years that like I was really missing some developmental layers as a kid, and which was contributing to a lot of like discourse um, and hardship in understanding who I was
Yeah.
later. And essentially I was trying to still do the right, like I went to a Catholic university and I was trying to do the right, like the thing for a long time, singing in church up until my mid 30s. um, and my dad's a music teacher, and so that was a big part of that, and trying to still make it make sense. And then really a lot of big life things fell apart, and getting a divorce and
Mm.
career stuff was just so hard, and harder than I was seeing like my friends.
Yeah.
And really just kind of like had a total implosion when I had a pretty major family rupture at the beginning of 2018, which I look back now and I have like kind of immense gratitude for it, because I would not have ever figured any of this out. I
Yeah.
was just like, maintaining status quo, but
Mm.
kind of this underlying like something's not right.
Yeah.
And this rupture kind of sent me into, I like to call it like a very long dark night of the soul, or this real like spiraling into a deconstruction,
Mm.
essentially. Just like what is the point? I don't get the point here.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
is this it? Like, so I pulled a lot of levers to pull me out of that, in terms of finding a really good therapist, finding slowly but surely finding some really great community. I
Mm.
found psychedelics. I spent time um, kind of just figuring out what some real basic pieces of like what does work for me.
Mm.
Everything from having some structure in my day or my week that actually makes sense for me,
Yeah.
instead of somebody else telling me what
Mm.
it's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
So I eventually, that was 28, what are we, 8 years away from
Mm.
that now. And what I realized throughout all of that is I was I was able to balance out this real darkness, not really knowing that I sent myself into my own reconstruction,
Mm.
uh, on not knowing anything about that. I just knew I had to feel better
Yeah.
and had to start sorting out some stuff. And when you realize, like, oh, I am so traumatized, and you're like, when that comes
Yeah.
into focus, you're like, oh,
Yeah, I think I argued with my therapist for a good 12 to 18 months that, and he kept going like, this is religious trauma. And I'm like, no, it's not.
no,
That's
it's not.
insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because really, I mean, there is a real I think there is still a very general understanding that religious trauma has to mean something criminal,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yes. And typically,
And
like I
mine,
think for a lot of people, particularly with the Catholic Church, religious trauma is sexual abuse. Like that's sort of
yeah,
like that's the connection that a lot of people make. And if it doesn't look like that, or it doesn't look like financial exploitation potentially
yep,
also, then well, it just sounds like you landed in a shitty church. And it just
yeah, then
like
well, you
so
should be
dismissed.
fine.
Yes,
Hmm.
exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've really noticed that people can feel quite unsettled when I bring this up, that
Yeah.
this is the source of my trauma, because it's so deeply layered and conditioned, and that indoctrination starting from from being born
Yeah.
is like is an unwinding that takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
to really understand what's going on.
I actually sit with like I kind of sit with the notion that I remember David Hayward said in the episode that I did with him, he said, I'll be deconstructing until the day I die. And I was like,
Well,
oh yeah, that kind of
day.
lands. Like there is
Mm-hmm.
always so many layers. Like people come and see me as a practitioner, like sometimes decades after they've left, and they're like, I just found this onion layer. Like I just found it and I didn't know it existed. And it's like, oh yeah, that probably will keep happening. Like we'll always find those layers, particularly like you said, when you are born into that system, it's part of your DNA. I've heard so many people
Yeah.
use that language of like it feels hardwired into my DNA.
Yeah. I I had some friends, some really dear friends help me sort out because because there was still like this like trying to make sense thing,
Mm,
right? Like what's actually going on.
yeah.
And man, having their help was so great because I was realizing that my therapist years ago was like, or years before this was like, you as somebody, he just kind of didn't realize I didn't know this. And he said, as somebody with a lot of social anxiety, da 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 da. And I was like, wait, I do? I have social and he goes, wait, you didn't know? And I said, oh, because Sam, I have been in outside sales for my
Yeah.
whole career.
Yeah.
And so I was in this profession that really did not suit me.
Mm,
It was actually so challenging to like get up and go and do this thing, but I just like
yeah.
I performed it all, right? And that's
Mm,
part of this trauma is this performance based thing, and perfectionism really suited me in that too.
mm,
But him pointing that out, and then I had this realization that oh, I just realized I have finally it landed that I have all this
yeah.
social anxiety, and then it allowed me to uncover that it was really because like my person I couldn't figure out what was my personality
Mm,
inside of that. So all this anxiety trying to be what like always like this, right? Like always on high alert. What is knowing the room immediately when I walk into it and like assessing it. And
yeah.
what it created is this all of these layers covering up like who I am.
Mm,
And the path to like trying to sort that out has been really fun and really cool and feels like wow, what a corner I was
yeah.
able to turn for
Yeah.
myself. And yeah, because I just kept saying I knew deep down, I'm like, what am I missing? I
Mm,
am missing something here. And then
yeah.
had this all kind of come to light.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah.
I imagine we will like tease that out a little bit more because we're going to talk a lot about three sort of areas in terms of spirituality, embodiment, and connection to self. But I want to sort of like start with spirituality because I want to ask a question on your story that might sort of like bridge into this area, which is I like to ask, and I always get such random answers from people who grew up in Catholicism because it kind of just depends on what area and what your family was like as to what it was.
Yeah.
Whereas I pretty much always get the same sort of like or a similar answer from evangelical people. Um,
Hmm.
what was your like you grew up like Catholicism is quite cultural. And so was your relationship with God cultural or was it personal while you were growing up in that space?
Yeah, I would say um, I was a really good girl in doing what I thought I should be doing.
Yeah.
So I think that's what really made it kind of fall apart is it
Mm,
didn't really work for me what was being told to me. And I've really flipped a corner now because I actually feel like the teachings feel a bit feel like child abuse to me to be like you have to
mm,
praise the Father and it's all glory to him and all of
yeah.
these ways and it
Not to
also
mention the
takes
blood sacrifice.
yeah. And are we eating him?
Oh my gosh.
I love that
Yeah.
you pointed that out.
Can you tell I went to a
Oh,
Catholic
so
school?
great.
I was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Like, yeah, the whole idea that it like literal like how are we okay with like metaphorical cannibalism? I don't know. But anyway.
And yeah, I remember
Side
being a
note,
kid
we're
and being like, is it
derailing.
actually, yeah. But I was like, is it actually the blood of Christ? And my parents were like, yes,
Maybe.
you know.
Mm, mm, mm.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. So I think, and also I am now finally having some memories from my childhood are
Mm,
finally coming into focus, which
yeah,
feels so cool. Some of them are like not great
yeah.
and feel hard, but also like good to know. Like for instance, I went to school with nuns
Mm,
and yeah, and I remember first confession, which is reconciliation, which is where you go and tell the priest what you did so that they can absolve you and you get a penance, which is usually like 5 Hail Marys or something simple, especially for little kids.
yeah,
But I remember standing in line for this first one, and the nun is like going down the line, making sure each kid knows what they're going to say because there's a lot of kids, and I'm sure that she's got to keep them going, right?
yeah,
And I can't believe I remember this, but she says to me, "What are you going to say?" And I remember saying, "I don't know." And she said, "Well, just make something up."
yeah,
Now, think about how twisted that is, right?
yeah.
We're going in to be absolved of these things, but she's telling me to lie. And so, so I think some of these memories, going back to your question, have really shown me how I was like, it wasn't making sense for me for a very long time.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
Hmm. I also have a memory of like I was a non-Catholic in a Catholic school, and so that was a fun
Hmm.
time. But the priest in our parish was he was the kind who would go back to the teachers, and if people didn't have a bad enough confession, then he would tell the
Mhm.
teachers so that the teachers would then go back to your parents and be like, they're lying in confession. They're just trying to like get away with like small sins, essentially. So it's
Wow.
like all of the irony around like what is supposed to be this like sacred ritual is actually
Mhm.
like I mean, it's really problematic on so many levels, but like
Yeah.
even just at that point where like it's not sacred at all, it's actually just like Chinese whispers between all of the people, and you're then like, I mean, I wonder how many other of those kids that she was checking on were
Yeah.
confessing about lying, and then she's telling you to lie. The irony of it is just palpable. But anyway.
Yeah.
A random little
Yeah.
side note.
Yeah.
Um,
That's so
oh,
interesting that you were not Catholic and went to the school.
yeah, it's not a fun time. I
Yeah.
don't recommend
And
it.
have to do all those things.
Oh
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because
I
we would
mean,
go to church 3 or 4 times.
I had to do confession, but I wasn't allowed to do any of the other rituals because I was not
Hmm.
Catholic. Um,
Hmm.
that's like a really nice, fun separation from the rest of your classmates.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Unbelievable. I thought the whole point of this was hope and belonging.
no,
Come on.
you are so mistaken, Katie. It's all about exclusion. Oh goodness. Okay,
Population.
so like if we shift into like spirituality, because like how do you define
Mm.
spirituality and how do you define it outside of
Mhm.
religion? Because I think
Yeah.
those two things are so intertwined that people just
Yeah.
think you can't have one without the other.
Totally. And I get that is really the
Yeah.
culture. And I like to really simplify it because um I think for people who have left a rigid or high control religion, that feels like an anomaly, right? To be
Yeah.
able to find some kind of spiritual thing. And so we just start with, if that is the place, the headspace they're in, we start with what does the word spiritual mean to you, and we start with
Mm.
that, and then I try to help simplify it and take the weight out of it because it's really just a connection to yourself and the world around you,
Yeah.
right? We get to make that mean whatever want to make it mean because
Mm.
everything else was made up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so where do you want to take that? What does that mean to you? And a lot of times we just remove spirituality, the word prayer, we remove it all for a long time
Yeah.
because it's not helpful. It's been kind of ruined for people. And
Mm.
I've only recently started say, making the word prayer work for me again
Mm.
and sits differently now. But that took some
Mm.
time,
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's like a good point, which is that actually there's nothing inherently wrong with those practices. It's the way that the
Mhm.
practices have been weaponized in systems of control, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, they ruined them.
Mm.
They ruined these beautiful things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, subsequently, it's also okay if you want to throw them all in the bin and never pick them up again. So that's also
Yeah.
okay. So,
Yeah.
I mean, so much of what faith and spirituality looks like inside of religion is based in certainty. And so then
Mhm.
how do we find something that looks like spirituality that is not based in certainty if that's what we're so used to?
Yeah. That is such a good question. I think there's two kind of main outcomes I like to work on with people, which we're heading towards like, let's take this opportunity to learn who you are,
Yeah.
right? And let's start there because you never got that chance. We skipped it probably. We missed being a curious kid. We missed getting to make mistakes, right? And so having a little bit of playfulness around that, I often step into, I really think all of this is should take place through the body, right? So we can access it a lot easier by going through the body. And so I've been a yoga teacher for a very long time, taught breath work. I'm heading into psychedelic guiding. So that will be another cool thing thread we can pull if we want to. But once we can like meet ourselves even just a little bit in terms of our body, it starts to open up some things, transforming some things into what is it that I value or I believe, or what truly for me, what is that? But those are like a little bit down the way. We start a little easier, with things like what pizza topping do you like,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Especially
Absolutely.
especially for the moms when you've just catered to a family and
Yeah.
and been taking care of everybody else.
Mm,
And so it's like learning who we are. It's working through some hard things because those are often in the way.
mm,
And I really like when people are in therapy too at this,
yeah.
at the same time, or have been in, having some awareness there.
Mm,
And then we work on like the more like moving forward things and tangible things and like activities or yoga or whatever we want to do.
yeah.
And the second piece to that, after learning kind of who you are, is stepping into kind of meaning
Yeah.
and how do we pull back in what's meaningful to you?
Mm,
Because we decided that doesn't work. And then it can feel like, the sand underneath us is like or it's just sand underneath us, right? The ground is soft. And that's actually such a beautiful one because again, you get to decide and we pull in new rituals for yourself, right? Like for me, all of a sudden I realized I really love walking around this lake every day. And that became a very like um, beautiful ritual for myself to connect with the earth, connect with the
mm,
outdoors and nature, and kind of became church for me. And it's so meaningful, right? But if we don't know really what meaning is, that can be a little bit of a gap there until we like find some things that work. If life feels a little bit ungrounded from a day to day, or kind of a calendar or structural perspective, let's say you used to pray before every meal,
mm,
we can do something different. We could,
yeah.
I don't know, maybe your child has a poem they like or whatever. We do gratitude things in my house and
Mhm.
um, layer in kind of the things that worked for you in church that are no longer there and that you maybe want to bring back in. So
Yeah.
oftentimes it's very tightly associated with community and belonging. That's a big
Mm,
one that we need.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, so those are the two things. I feel like between those two, you can become quite embodied and deeply spiritual just
Yeah.
on your own,
Yeah.
right? It's all about you.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, spirituality is just a connection to yourself and to the world around you, which means realistically, anything can become a spiritual practice. Anything can feel
Yeah.
spiritual to you. Like I love the idea of just sort of like keeping time replacing ritual. Like I used to be the person who would start my day reading the Bible and doing a devotion and things like that. And I still do start my day reading. It's just with a coffee and my Kindle, and I read far more inappropriate things than the Bible, but
Yes. Awesome.
or read trauma books or things like that. So,
Mhm.
like, I'm still doing a similar practice, but it's just in a way that honors where I am at now as opposed to where I used to be.
Mhm.
And I love the simplicity of what that looks like, in that I think a lot of people have this idea that spirituality post religion um, looks like tarot and crystals and oracle cards,
Right.
and that's great, and I also love all of those things, but that's also not what it has to look like. It can look like
Mhm.
nature and swimming, and I mean, you said pizza toppings, and I was like,
Yeah.
food is pretty spiritual to me.
Food.
So
Totally.
yeah, I love the simplicity that, like, actually
Mhm.
spirituality doesn't have to look in any way, shape, or form of what you think it needs to look like.
Yeah,
But
totally.
also, that's messy and terrifying and uncertain when you've been given a
Mhm.
prescriptive idea. And so how do you sort of like, or how did you also, like, for your own experience, how did you deal with that, like, not knowing feeling? Like, I have no idea, this is messy, there's so much uncertainty here. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I think that there has been a lot of capacity building for myself in terms of being okay with the not knowing.
Yeah.
And I think that was when I was deep in deconstruction and deep in this like pretty depressed and traumatic state,
Mm,
I went through a lot of that. And even that alone was building capacity for myself
yeah.
to be okay with it until, and this mine lasted a long time, like 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
And by at some point, I, you know, it's slow. So it's deep, deep, deep. And then as you're slowly coming out, things are kind of popping back in. And I'm getting more, and with that capacity, I'm getting more and more comfortable with the idea that I don't think I'm going to go to hell. Right.
Yeah. It's a pretty
And,
nice feeling,
and
hey?
yeah. And I think this is all made up.
Um,
And I think that
yeah.
it's not for me.
Yeah.
And once that was starting to really feel like embodied and land, then it made it a lot easier to sit with, okay, what does work, and allow
Mm,
it and let it work, right?
yeah.
And not let it, or not make it have to be something so big, like, oh well, now I
Mm,
think the thing, I love what you touched on about, like, now it has to be crystals or it has to be this
yes.
very woo thing.
Yeah.
I think that's so common, is that we swing all the way the other way
Yeah.
then. And I definitely stepped into some of that, but then I was
Yeah.
like, that doesn't work for me. It just doesn't. I love it, but it
Mm,
didn't, like, when something really fuels you, or is
mm,
life-giving,
yeah.
right? And when it really feels um like it works for you. And that's, I
Okay,
think,
I'm
so
going to stop
important.
you there and ask a question,
Yeah.
because I don't often do that. Because what if, though, and this is often what I find with, like, a lot of people who come from, like, evangelical spaces, or like anything where what is centered is, it's not about religion, it's about relationship. You have a relationship with God, a personal, direct line of contact, particularly in faith spaces where there is a premise on spiritual gifts and connecting to the Holy Spirit and things like that. And so, what if that also felt life-giving? And then how do you tell the
Mm,
difference between that, and how am I supposed to know if something is life-giving again? Because this
mm.
also felt life-giving.
Yeah, I think that's a curious question,
It's
right? I
messy, hey?
think that, yeah, because I think I can relate to that, in
Yeah.
that I really felt like, going to church and being
Mm,
a part of, I so wanted to be so deeply involved with this big family that I have. And then when it just didn't, I think I was wanting it so much that it didn't happen. And then that was like the the turmoil that happened from that, right, is what
mm,
spun me into figuring out what does actually land. And
yeah.
so not everybody's going to have such a, like, huge moment that takes them there. But I think if you are in this place where you're trying to sort out, okay, what now? I
Mm.
think there's some real discovery that can happen around, was that actually life-giving?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because for instance, like worship music, it's it is so calculated,
Oh,
and they know the four chords that are really going to move everybody, and they're going
yeah.
to like take us to this place, and that is not the spirit. That is just good
Mm.
music, like music that people like, and like it's
Yeah.
part of our chemistry. And so it's kind of a question. It's like, oh, and I do tell people all the time, like, replace some of that with like great concerts you want to go to, and go
Yeah.
listen to some awesome music that feels like it's moving you, because it can do the same thing. And then we start to understand, wait, was that really
Yeah.
life-giving?
Yeah.
Was that me in
Absolutely.
that? Or was
Mm.
I really doing a good job of playing this part in this thing?
Mm. Yeah.
Right? That in this thing that wasn't actually ever looking out for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, people listening will know that I talk about this quite often as a former worship leader. I talk a lot about like
Oh,
the,
you were?
yeah, and
So
and I honestly probably like it would have been a good 12 to 18 months where I just could not listen to music at all, any genre,
Mhm.
any style, even instrumental music, because I just could not tell the difference between what my, and also we'll talk about this as well because I was so disconnected from my body.
Mm.
Like,
Mhm.
just I thought every piece of music was like the spirit moving because, like, every piece of music, like, like your body responds to it, whether it's like
Mhm.
Hillsong or Lady Gaga. And so it was kind of like,
Totally.
the fuck am I supposed to make of that? And so I just basically cut it all out because
Mm.
I couldn't deal with also the pain of losing like the connection to music and to worship and things like that. And so
Yeah.
it is one of those things where you learn more and you go, oh, actually, no, that's just like emotional manipulation with like a beautiful chord
Yeah.
progression.
Yeah.
And so it's so messy and complicated where
Mhm.
the things that felt so beautiful and intimate and life-giving actually now just feel a little bit fucked.
Mm.
Is kind of
Yeah.
my
I'm
clinical
so
therapy
sorry.
language.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I'm
oh,
so sorry though. It's a horrible truth
yeah,
when we are faced with that.
yeah.
It's not fun. We're not, no one would choose this, right? Like no one's
Mm.
like, can't wait to deconstruct this thing that was my whole life,
Yeah, no, not at
right?
all. It's awful. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. Okay. Let's let's
I'm so
sh no,
sorry. Oh,
let's shiver. I
yeah.
and like I talk about it quite often, but it's yeah, it's like shitty. It's still always.
Hmm.
And now I just get a kick out of like writing Substacks about all of the problematic worship lyrics that I used to sing. So at least I have some fun with it.
So many,
Yeah, it's
so
great.
many.
Okay. One of the things that I notice so often in this space is people leave one fundamental system and they land in another fundamental system, and it's
Mhm.
just slightly less problematic or slightly less harmful.
Right.
And so, how can someone tell the difference between a new form of spirituality that is nourishing or a spirituality that just has the same old control mechanisms, but it just looks a whole lot aesthetically pleasing and prettier?
Yeah. Yeah, right. I would say I even did that with yoga,
Yeah.
like trying to sort this out. And all of a sudden I land in this thing where it's kind of culty in some ways, and
Yeah.
um, but but really felt good to find, because it was like, oh, this place that feels like community is here, and
Yeah.
people feel like they have good hearts and stuff's very similar to
Yeah.
church, right? It's
Yep.
I was just reflecting on this the other day that I literally did that.
Yeah.
And then I had this one of the things that's too bad about religion is that they remove your ability to be discerning, right? And
Yes.
it's so important. It's like we got chopped off at the ankles.
Mm.
And I headed into a giant training. I have a lot of training in yoga, and the second big one I did right before I got certified, it completely imploded because the guy who was like the main
Oh,
creator
the
of it
guru.
was doing illegal things and bad stuff with women, and totally bad. And you're like, I just gave this guy a ton of money. And what is happening? And I didn't have the realization then too, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But this was pre deconstruct, pre any of this. So I still was trying to be Catholic too. And my parents didn't, you could feel the disapproval about me
Mm.
heading into this yoga thing. And I would just always be like, it's not a religion, but maybe
It
they
can
must
be
have been able to see
culty.
it a little bit. Yeah, but it is culty. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that I think sometimes that is just what you have to do
Yeah.
to really figure out where is going to land right, what where the right place is for you,
Mm.
and learn these lessons. I don't think we can just avoid everything. I think um, my hope is that for people, once you've left something that was really traumatic, that you then land in a place where at least if it is religious,
Mm.
they're not taking the Bible literally, right? That seems to be a problem.
Yeah.
Um, and that they don't remove the power of the individual person. And when everything, even in like yoga or whatever, when everything is taught from a place that it lives outside of you,
Mm.
meaning like in Catholicism, like you're praying to something else, you're not,
Yeah.
it's very disconnected from actually what's inside.
Yeah.
And you're going to be saved by something else, and everything is outside of you. I would say things probably feel a little cleaner when it is all about the individual person and how they feel and how they experience it, and that if something were not right for them, that they can actually say it,
Mm.
and that's not a big deal,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I also
So
think even just like throwing in the word have to, like I think if you feel like you have to do it, that's probably not a great sign that like a new
mhm,
sense of spirituality is nourishing you. It's like restricting you in some way because if you feel like you have to do it, then there is some level of like compliance, even if it's like internal compliance, it still is like you're just replacing one have to for another, even if it's just
yeah,
a different flavor of spirituality.
I
We've
even think
thrown
about, yeah, oh sorry, go
no
ahead.
go.
I was gonna say, I even think about like with yoga, we were doing, this was like before there were real labor laws around this, and we were doing a ton of stuff for free because we just loved it. And
Mm,
how isn't that so funny, because it's so similar to the free labor of women in a church,
yeah.
right? And it's
Yep.
on their backs. And I have a friend of mine who was talking about, she left one church for another one where all of a sudden she found herself like all day Sunday doing all this stuff. Like,
Mm,
is that a requirement to be part
yeah.
of this?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I
And
think
I
you're right
think,
with it.
yeah, and I think even if you're like the new sense of spirituality doesn't involve other people, like I remember when I first started, like, I mean, I remember the like visceral fear when I first bought my first like tarot deck, but that's a side
I
note.
I had the same.
Yeah.
No, it made me feel really
I was like,
uncomfortable.
oh,
I
I'm pretty
know.
sure I'm bringing Satan into the house. And my wife was like, that's insane. And I was like, you know exactly what I mean. But
Uh-huh.
like even if there is no community attached to that, like I still found myself like um taking answers from the tarot guidebook of like questions that I would ask and like it was probably only around like a couple of months or so and I was like, "Oh, I'm treating the tarot guidebook like the Bible. Like I'm literally going to it, I'm asking it questions and I'm like trying to get the answers from there because I don't know where else to
Hmm.
get the answers from." So that didn't
Hmm.
involve anybody else. That was just like an internal sense of like I'm so used to externalizing that like inner authority to someone or
Yep.
something else and not me. And so I think there's those
Mhm.
little things that can also show up as, oh, this is not necessarily nourishing or not in the way that I'm practicing it currently. Now I'm far more loose with the tarot cards, but um,
Yeah, good. I'm glad.
we've thrown around the word disconnection and you've mentioned embodiment. And so like it's also a pretty trendy term on social media and things like that.
Mm,
And so when you say embodiment, what does that actually mean in plain language for people?
mhm. Yeah, I think that it's understanding how you feel inside. it's the knowingness of how you feel inside. And I guess if I really think about where I came to this realization is that uh how important it is because of how disconnected I was. And when we are just and started realizing that a lot of people that I know that are trying to like, move themselves forward cannot access anything inside.
Yeah.
And becoming embodied is like, oh, it's one of my friends understand was years ago was like, do you know your yes and no? And I was like, what are you talking about? What does that even
Mm.
mean? And she's like, I can just tell in my body when something's a yes and when something's a no. And I was like, no idea what you're
Yeah.
talking about. And that really like triggered something for me of like, I was like, oh, is that something I could, is that even possible?
Yeah.
What in the world? And started playing with this. And sure enough, yeah, it's totally possible. We've just stopped listening. And
Mm.
especially when like trauma is in the way, you want to avoid your body so bad because it's so uncomfortable to feel.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that
Not to
stuff,
mention
and you're
all of the
afraid of it.
messaging. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so stepping into some kind of embodiment,
Mm.
I'm inviting people to open that door gently and with patience. And we're not like going in there real deep right away, but because stuff can come up pretty quickly, and we're talking about before, we're going to build capacity around sitting with the feeling and not avoiding it and
All
being
fun
like,
stuff.
yeah, yeah. But it's,
Mm.
they call it a holotropic effect, right?
Mm.
Where your body knows what to do,
Yeah.
but we have to kind of like help it along a little bit.
Yeah.
And the benefit and the payoff is that you get to, step into some real deep trust, some real stability of self, some real steadiness.
Yeah.
One of my yoga students a couple months ago was like, you're always talking about like coming into the knowing of me
Mm.
and the deep knowing. And I said, yeah, we're going to get there.
Yeah.
It can take however long it takes, but we're
Yeah.
going to come in where you just like know yourself
Yeah.
and the fullness of who you are. You get to know who you are, not somebody else telling you.
Yeah. And that can take quite a lengthy period of time for some people, depending on the level of trauma and the disconnection. And like, there's so many
Mm-hmm.
different contributing factors that can make that a very long process for some people.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think most people, or at least most people who have listened to this podcast, understand the messaging that religion gives, particularly around purity culture and like the
Mm-hmm.
disconnection from the body and things like that. And so, but in terms of like what that actually looks like, what did you see in yourself and what do you see in the people that you work with in terms of like, what are some of those signs that you are disconnected from your body?
Mm-hmm. Well, usually people know. Like I always
Mm.
knew. I don't know if you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of like a guy the other day, I said he's just logicking through everything that's
Yeah.
going on for him forever, and it's never worked. And he really is trying to find some help here. And I said, let's talk about because we've had many conversations, and finally I brought it up. I said, are you able to access your body at all? And he goes, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And I said, and he has kind of an engineer brain. And I said, what do you think about that? He said, immediately I feel fear. And I go, you feel it? I
Mm.
go, so we're not as far away from this as we thought. He just didn't.
Yeah.
I think it feels elusive to
Mm.
people when it's like, I was telling a friend last night, I said, when there's something fun and exciting, we're like, oh, I'm in, right?
Mm.
Once we start to like understand what that was like, that
Yeah.
yes, you're like, okay. And so that's this end. And then if we can come over to the other end and you're like, if somebody said you want to hang out with this person, you're like that. No, I don't. What a no is. And so then we're going to start playing with that in between
Yeah.
space and find more subtlety around it.
Mm.
And that's where yoga, breath work, psychedelics, these ways of getting in there and accessing it and helping to accelerate it. Because if you are just a thinker and
Mm.
you can think your way through it, pretty hard.
Yeah.
to get there. There has to be something else to shake it up.
Yeah, and I think I probably didn't know that I had quite the level of disconnection from my body for a really long time. And I think that's
Mhm.
probably just like I was the space that I was in. And I remember the only sensation that I could ever describe in my body was always pain related. Like, obviously, it's an appropriate sensation to feel in your body. Like, if
Yeah.
you have a headache, or if you, like, if someone punches you and you have a bruise, like the bruise hurts, like you can associate pain. But I remember someone saying once, like, what are your hunger cues? And I was like, I have no fucking idea. How am I supposed to know that? Like,
We've
I
ignored
go
it
from,
forever.
yeah, I'm like, how am I supposed to know that? And they're like, well, how do you know when you eat? When I feel like I'm sick, or when it's dinner time. Like,
Hmm.
you eat based on a schedule. Like, it's
Hmm.
it's 6 p.m., you eat dinner. And so, like, I think for some there, particularly when there are survival strategies like dissociation and things like that, there can be a sense of, oh, I actually didn't realize that I was disconnected from my body. I thought that this
Yeah.
was just how it is. And so, if that's what someone is saying right now, listening to this conversation, like, yeah, but I'm so dissociated, I actually don't know what that
Mhm.
disconnection feels like. What then?
Yeah, I think you hit on it, which is we start looking at what it is to be a human,
Yeah.
right? Those basic things. Because years ago, a therapist friend of mine said I was saying something to her about uh, something that was going on with somebody, and they said, well, they got to do it because, or they got to do something that I felt like, oh, you get to do that, and she
Yeah.
goes, or you get to say that, and she said, yeah, because you're human, and I
Yeah.
was like, wait, what does that mean? Being what does being human get you?
Yeah.
Like, do you get, because I had ignored everything that I needed
Mm.
for as long as I can remember, needing to go to the bathroom,
Yeah.
needing to when need to eat,
Yeah.
needing to sleep. I have ignored all of it
Mm.
so that I could make sure I did everything I was supposed to right.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I think starting at the humanness of us, which ties into all of this, right? In terms of your understanding what you want from your own spirituality or just your own connectedness,
Yeah.
um, which steps you into your own belongingness.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I think for a really long time, and I actually like legitimately do experience it in bouts at like now, but I used to think that my sleep issues were always insomnia, but actually for
Mm.
like after a really long time and being able to sort of like actually cognitively and think and reflect about it, I just also I always saw sleep as a wasted use of time. Because like I could have, which I know sounds absolutely like crazy to think about, because like
Hmm.
and now I always like I'm always like on with my clients, like, how's your sleep? How are you sleeping? Yada yada. But when everything has an eternal thing at stake, sleep just feels like a waste of time because you could be using
Hmm.
that to learn or to grow or to pray or something. And it was just like why would I close my eyes and sleep for like 8 to 10 hours? Like, that's so much missed opportunity. And like
Yeah.
that on the
Yeah.
surface sounds ridiculous. But when everything has such a big, hefty, eternal weight attached to it, time is so
Hmm.
precious. And so
Hmm.
it just, all of those things lead to the most weird and subtle ways that you disconnect from your body, and you
Yeah,
don't actually even realize that you're doing it at the time. And then you just put some other language on it, which is, oh, I struggle to go to sleep, or I have insomnia, or
totally.
something like that. And then the fun little side effect is that actually it kind of just develops into that space anyway. But um,
Yeah. Then it does become that.
woo! But anyway,
How does,
um,
can I ask you a quick
yeah,
question?
yeah.
How was maybe your relationship, or how is your relationship with just rest?
Oh,
Is that something you can
it's
do okay?
wildly shocking, Katie. even now. Like my therapist would be like, answer this truthfully, Sam. Oh, it's terrible. Also, I have raging ADHD. So I
Mm,
just am like on the go all the time. So I have had to learn to reframe rest as low level stimulation for me. So
mm,
like reading on the couch, like my brain is still going, like I'm still feel like I'm doing something, or I build Lego or something like that
mhm.
where I'm still present, I'm still doing something, but my body is able to rest. I'm not like on, so to speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, otherwise, it's wildly atrocious.
Yeah, that can be so hard. I know. You're basically doing restorative rest. I love that.
Yes, yeah, I
Yeah.
it very much had to be, and I talk about this with like other clients who have ADHD, which is that sometimes we just need to use language that makes it make sense in our brain. Because if I use the
Mhm.
word rest, then I will like I have a history like, and the church just like primes this in you to just like self-gaslight. And so
Mhm.
like if I use the term rest, then that's automatically, I sense that as laziness or not a
Mm,
productive use of time. And so for me to get rest, I've had to reframe it in a way that, and down the track, that might shift and might change. But for right now, only like a decade out of that space, um, a reframe is enough for right now to at least still get the end result that we desire, which is that I need to slow the fuck down. However I get there, I don't actually
yeah.
care right now.
Do you feel like
Uh,
you have less like burnout? You have like a little more sustainability, I guess I would say.
I mean, look, it's getting there. I am doing this podcast on the back end of a cold, so maybe that's not a great representation, but we're getting there. I did just like completely redo my whole. I also have chronic fatigue, which doesn't help. So like I'm all
Yeah.
going, but my body is like, can you fucking stop?
Yeah.
And so it's just a really weird like conundrum where my brain and my body are not lining up, um
Yeah.
and that's okay. So it
Yeah.
just is,
Do you
yeah.
guys have hormone replacement therapy?
Yeah.
Like
I like
testosterone and
it's
stuff?
yeah. I am only Katie, how old do you think I am?
No, I don't mean that. No, no, no. I don't mean that, that you're heading into menopause. I just mean that sometimes those types of things can help,
Yeah.
regardless of your age
Yeah.
or menopause or anything. It
Yeah.
could be a hormone thing.
Right. Yes, like it's largely I've worked out ADHD, chronic fatigue, and complex PTSD, and that combination is not always a great load of fun. But again,
Yeah,
like I sort of
yeah.
said, like it's for me, it's just about reframing it in a way that makes it make sense, and makes
Mhm.
it feel like I'm doing something that is like productive, even though it's not productive, but in my brain, it's productive for my body. So it makes sense for me to do the said
Yeah.
thing. And so, and I think the more that, and I've seen this happen with my clients, the more that that happens, the easier it is to start using the language that was triggering or activating for you. But for right now, if reframing it is what is needed to be able to
Mhm.
access those parts, then that's kind of okay with me. So, which I think is that sort of very
Totally.
slow, gentle process that you mentioned earlier. And I feel like we
Mhm.
just derailed into a little like
Yeah.
mini session.
We can cut we can cut that out. Whatever.
Oh goodness. No, it's fine. I'm pretty over with people, but like it
You're so fun.
I do want to ask a question because I think like I mentioned that embodiment is like quite a trendy term on social media.
Mhm.
And so I want to ask what or how people can tell the difference between embodiment and self-improvement culture.
Mm, yeah, I think, yeah, that's a very fine line, right?
Yeah.
But I think what's important about embodiment is that uh, you're accessing parts of yourself that have been hiding for a long time, and we're not fixing anything.
Mm.
So it's not. Uh, a lot of my yoga training is around alignment. And so I really try hard not to use language where it's like you're doing it wrong kind of a thing, right? Where that would lead that spills into that, like, I have to be better, I have to do better kind of a thing. And really embodiment, when you're like fully embodied of the thing, and that deep, and you're just like, I get it now, I really understand, and like from the core of who you are, there's a landing inside of that that feels so relieving. And you know it when you feel it, because all of a sudden you're just like, uh there's a bit of an awakening around it. So I think it's just deeper, and it's slower, and it takes into account you as the individual. There's not some 5-step thing. There's not the right way to do it. It's just going to be how, because it's up to you.
Yeah.
You have to do it. And I like a gold star just as much as everybody else.
Yeah.
But like it has to come from within, that gold star.
Yeah, if someone is selling you a 5 steps to embodiment, throw it in the bin because it's rubbish. Like,
Probably.
yeah, it's likely just a quick fix band-aid. But I like the point that you use, because obviously we know so much of like high control religion and fundamentalism relies on the core concept that you are broken and everything comes
Yeah.
from that. And ironically, self-improvement culture also kind of relies on this, on a similar
Yeah.
concept, which is that something is inherently wrong with you, or something is wrong and that something needs to change. And so
Mhm.
I think if it feels like it's mirroring the same dynamics that you've come from in terms of like um 10 steps to fix or improve or whatever it is, then it's the underlying assumption is that there is still something wrong there. And that's
Yeah.
not about, accessing internal authority. That's, you're still outsourcing that to this person on social media who thinks that they've got the gold standard to fix X, Y, and Z problems, right? It's the same thing,
Hmm.
but better
Hmm.
packaging and probably with a ring light. So
Hmm.
it's
Yeah,
mm,
we're bringing in. I am in no way an IFS
mm.
expert or anything like
Yeah,
that,
no, me
but
neither.
it's really yeah, really that idea of bringing in. We've ignored a lot of the parts of us,
Yeah.
and that's the disconnection, right? And
Yeah.
it's just kind of, we were never allowed to act. None of it was welcomed,
Mm,
and so we're just kind of bringing all the parts in. Some are really ugly and not great ones,
mm.
but we're bringing them in because that's the wholeness of us. The whole isn't like, oh, we're fixed now.
Yeah.
It's the wholeness of us. And going back to the capacity word, we're growing the capacity to sit in with that part of
Mm.
ourselves and be like, uh, that's just part of me, and I can be okay with that. And I want to access that, less in terms of like it showing, rearing its head, but still, I think
Yeah.
that's where we become that steady whole person.
Yeah. And so much of like what we talk about in terms of like embodiment is like coming home to yourself essentially and home to your body.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
what does replacing external authority look like with internal authority? And I guess what did it take for you personally to start trusting yourself again?
Yeah, I think for me, the coming out of the darkness into this place of like true, that was really the first step of like the true understanding that the acknowledgement that this doesn't work for me was at least a start,
Yeah.
right? And then um, stepping into these ways that were working as I pulled all these levers, right, that I was talking about. I started putting marbles in a jar of things that did work for me and that were allowing me to see that in those moments of yes, I could, oh, I'm getting what that feels like. I'm getting what that feels like. I'm getting what that feels like. And from there, there's a little thing called confidence inside that then we start building a little resilience around it, and resilience around the fact that it's not like that that doesn't work for me anymore.
Mm,
And some real kind of necessary ego around it. And and confidence to continue to make those choices coming from a place of real self trust and
Yeah.
real self inner authority.
Mm.
And honestly, it wasn't really until I started accessing my body more that I was even able to get there.
Yeah.
And that was through yoga and just my yoga practice. And I've been a yoga teacher since 2006. And a lot of that was not embodied. So if we talk about the opposite, I'm deeply disconnected from here to here coaching people, and I think I did okay job, but it wasn't what I really feel. I feel it now, just so like real for myself, and because I get it, I get what it feels like, and hopefully my students feel that now too. But
Yeah.
but that's the hope.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think that's how I figured it out
Yeah.
is knowing what doesn't work is major,
Yeah.
and then finding some ways to open up that can for yourself.
Mm.
Right.
I will often even just like allow people to sit with, like, even saying the words like, that's not for me, like, even just knowing what isn't working, that's something in itself. Like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
of course, finding the things that you like, that you want, that you believe, and that you value, and all of those lovely things, they're great.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, even just like, there is an element of self-trust, even being able to just say the words, yeah, I don't actually think that's for me. I don't think I vibe with that anymore. I don't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
That seems problematic to me. Even those things, they all have an element of self-trust attached to them. They're just in the opposite direction.
Yeah,
Knowing what you don't want is just as powerful as knowing what you do. Um,
totally.
yeah, like if
Totally.
otherwise, how do we ever how do we ever notice harm or anything like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And I think I've done I pat myself on the back, and I'm just sitting immense gratitude for some people that are in my life now.
yeah,
And I think surrounding yourself with people who are doing the things that you were like never thought could even be accessible for you because you've always been told what to do, or you have to be a people pleaser that you don't know any other way. And I have a friend of mine who is just so good at always doing what is right for her.
yeah,
And this is not in a importance way, or self-centered, or selfish at all. It is just, she is really clear about what's right for her. And she's also really good at slowing things. She's always really thoughtful to respond. And
yeah.
I've learned a lot about this because I need to zoom out, right? And she takes her time, and she's like, a lot of let me think about it. And then
Mm,
usually it's like I don't think that's good. I don't think I'm gonna like that. So I'm not gonna go. And
yeah,
like that was like eye-opening to me of like, are you a fortune teller? Like, or, how do you know? I just go.
yeah,
I just do the thing.
yeah.
And so having some really solid people around you that you admire and that you
Mm,
can really help you to grow those muscles.
yeah. I mean, like,
Mm-hmm.
obviously the goal is to move from external authority to internal authority, but
Mm-hmm.
how do people do that without overcorrecting and swinging straight into hyper independence or something like that?
Hmm. I guess that's an interesting thing to ask. Because I was so hyper independent, but I
Mm,
also now know it was not what I wanted,
yeah.
right? And maybe that could be something that they do need for a
Mm,
moment, right? And they need to
yep.
swing a little bit. Um, this is a bit out of my scope because I am not a therapist,
Yeah.
but like maybe that would not be good for them. But I'm like, maybe it's something to experience because they've never been able to try that on. Like we should have
Yeah.
done all of this as kids and as
Yes.
teenagers, right?
Yeah.
And we should have been able to learn this in a safe environment. And now we're just like adults, but we're little
Mm,
kids inside trying to figure it out.
yeah.
Uh, and so I think swinging into hyper independence could be really beneficial.
Mm,
Um, but also I don't know. I don't know. That's kind of a
yeah.
hard one for me.
Yeah, and I think like I would agree that like swinging into independence is really helpful. I also think that like I talk about um, shifting uh, from the external authority to an appropriate diversion of authority. So, like,
Mm,
especially when you're so used to going to like a pastor or a priest for everything, like you're going to them for spiritual
yeah.
advice, but you're also going because you have this medical condition, and you're also going because there's relationship problems, and you're also going because
Mhm.
like maybe there's a creak in your house and maybe it's a devil or a demon. Like you're going to like one person for everything, and it's like
Mhm.
that's not what that is supposed to look like. We don't go to a GP or a medical professional for like structural housing advice. We go to them for
Mhm.
medical advice. And so I think being able to, like, we don't have to swing to like finding all of the answers all of the time from within, because that's not great either. That's us
Yeah.
just thinking that we have all of the answers. But actually, it's just going like, if I don't know this, who is the appropriate person to go to? And then sitting with like, how do I feel about what they're
Mhm.
saying? Like, does that feel like it aligns with what I value, what I believe? Like, all of those sorts of things, as opposed to just swinging to God has all of the answers or the pastor has all of the answers to I have all
Right.
of the answers. Actually, there's like a middle ground there where, depending on what the question is, as to who might have a possible answer to what it is. So that's kind of how I talk about like, yes, we want to swing,
Yeah.
but actually, like, swings are supposed to move. So depending on what question we're asking, depends on where we find that answer.
I love
It's
that. That's
fun.
a
Yeah.
beautiful analogy. Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Um,
Yeah.
I imagine some of the work that you are doing with like embodiment and self-trust and discernment and things like that is around intuition, because it's something that like that's a way for us to connect with ourselves and
Mhm.
our own inner authority. And so, how have you found it helpful working with people around intuition when that is very easily confused post high control religion with that was always the Holy Spirit, or that was
Mhm.
always like it was potentially like an inner deception from the enemy or something like that. How do we start to see our intuition as something that is good and true for us and not have like an automatic religious connotation to it?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, we can go into the yes or no conversation, right? There's
Yep.
that, and that's just like, that's a no or that's a
Yeah.
yes. And kind of honing that skill. Uh, but also, I think there's like an element of starting to notice when you didn't listen to it,
Yeah.
right? Like you said, the opposite effect is so important here because I've really noticed where I'm like, oh, I didn't listen to myself and I knew
Mm.
better.
Yeah.
And because that's probably going to take a while for me to like get to a place where I'm like my friend, like so clear, like early,
Yeah.
uh, because it wasn't something we were allowed to have for so long, right?
Mm.
It wasn't, again, that muscle just never got worked. We literally ignored it forever.
Yeah.
So I think that it's both of those things is I think the yes and no game is like really fun, especially to play with like a lot of this, it can be really hard for you to make decisions. And
Yeah.
so even when it comes to like a menu, I sit there and go, what do I want to eat?
Yeah, people might actually not know
What
what that is. So maybe just like give a quick, like,
yeah.
what is the yes or no thing?
Sure. So we were talking about it
Yeah.
before, just a touch, but around what is my yes, what
Yeah.
is my no,
Yeah.
and we can access it through simple ways like knowing what you want to eat,
Yeah.
or knowing if you're wanting to eat, right, or if
Mm.
it's just time. Am I making this choice because I actually want it?
Mm.
I had some pretty intense food issues, which is pretty common, to have in any direction of something controlling around food,
Yeah.
and had to start thinking about like asking, is this really hunger, is this really like what I want to eat right now? And it wasn't until later that I really realized it was such a coping mechanism to avoid the anxiety.
Yeah.
And I think so the yes and no would have really benefited me to have some sort of skill around that back then,
Yeah.
and I think that ordering off of the menu can help you to really discern if you want a salad right now or if you want a pizza right now.
Mm.
And especially with all the voices that are telling you that salad is the right choice and salad is the healthy choice and salad, but you really want pizza.
Yeah.
And how many times do we just ignore that?
Mm. Yeah.
And whatever, it's a
Yeah.
very lighthearted example
Yeah.
of this thing,
Yeah.
but
But I think using those lighthearted examples is there is little to no consequence attached to those
mhm.
situations. And that's where, like, I will use ice cream as the example that I use with people, which is that you go to an ice cream place and it's like, do I want like vanilla or do I want bubblegum or like whatever it is, whatever the two choices are, and it's just going like, and sometimes I will encourage people to go to those places and to actively like ask the question around a flavor that they like and a flavor that they know that they don't like. So like
Mhm.
I don't like I love chocolate. I hate chocolate ice cream. So like and to just notice like the sensation thinking about the idea that you would have to eat chocolate ice cream and to start to be able to notice though and associate those sensations with what your no is and like the idea of
Yeah.
like eating like bubblegum or strawberry or whatever the flavor that you like is like what is that ease or what is that excitement or the joy or like the anticipation of eating something that you enjoy feel like sensation wise in your body, and then you get to start broadening that out into places that are a bit bigger than ice cream or a bit bigger than dinner
Mhm.
or a bit bigger than that. But we've got to start with the small, gentle things that have little to no consequences. Like if you pick the wrong ice cream, that nothing comes from that other than you might have wasted a few dollars and now you have shitty ice cream. But like otherwise, there's no real issue with picking
Mhm.
the wrong, quote unquote, because like, is there wrong ice cream? Um,
Yeah.
option, right? So
Mhm.
I think you're right in that, like, yes, it sounds like a really simplistic example, but it's also when we're talking about like people who have come from high control systems who typically have experienced trauma, starting with those simple, like, little to no consequence, silly, sort of like frivolous day-to-day things, that's actually where we can get that baseline of information, right?
Yeah, I mean, even in my own experience, the decision-making fatigue was so intense.
Yeah.
And even with just something simple like ice cream, it was a lot of information around how regret would set in and that I made the wrong choice and this
Yes.
whole thing about ice cream, right? And so it was heading into the decision. I know I would sit there and like with my daughter when she's little, and I would be like, which one do I want? And then it was like, oh, I'll get the sorbet. Then it was like the healthier thing. And it was like all this like twisted conversation
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
head. And it can become such a freeing thing to start allowing yourself um, to make the wrong choice,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
be like,
Yeah.
and have some like, oh well, okay,
Yeah.
next time I'll remember to get the cookie dough,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I like that. I like the
Mhm.
note about like what happens after you make the choice is also information for that
Yeah.
whole process, like the before, during, and after. There, it's just information. They're not. It's not like a moral slap on the back of, like the back of your hand or anything like that. It's just
Mhm.
information for us for the next time that we need to make a decision.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Um,
Cool.
so what does in like present day 2026, what does a connected life look like for you now?
Hmm. A connected life. Uh, well, I am happy to say that I feel connected to myself.
Yeah.
And uh, like I said, I've built a really great community around me that fulfilled that kind of like belonging piece and community
Mm,
piece. And then really great connection with my daughter as I've like opened up all of this to her, and kind of my experience with
yeah.
it has been really healing. Uh, and I pull all the levers. I pull the, what was a really big shift for me was not only knowing that the walk in the park was mattered to me and created meaning, I decided that it was a mandatory part of my day. I allowed for it to always happen in my day
Mm,
instead of like anything that would have been for me was always on the back burner. It was just only if I had time. And this isn't like me,
mm,
oh, I'm some martyr or anything. It just always worked that way
yeah.
because of my anxiety. And so now I decided that that is happening every day for me because it means so much to me. And
Mm,
then I created a routine at the end of the day that is this whole, my daughter did this whole self-care routine that she has. And I was like, I want to do that.
mm,
And it's created this beautiful way to head into sleep. And
yeah.
so I bookend my day with really significant me time
Mm,
that allows me to show up better for her and show up better for friends and feel connected in that way. And so I don't go to church or anything like that. I actually feel like I am in it every day
yeah.
because I feel really, really good and close to people and it took a lot of work for myself.
Mm,
I think that figuring out how to do that was really hard for me. There's not like a lot of ways. There's not like some package you can go buy of like, how do I figure this out now? And that's why I stepped into this
yeah.
work is because I was like, oh, I can help people, you know,
Yeah.
kind of piece together something new for themselves that works for them and inside of the life that they have, right? They're not, you don't have to go to Bali now and like study under somebody. There's no like thing that needs to change. It's, you already have it all. The
Yeah.
tools are, you have it all.
Yeah. And
So yeah,
I love that note because I think that there is this, and again, this is probably very much like a social media-esque thing, which is that embodiment and connecting to yourself kind of only happens at this big, beautiful retreat. Which, yes, retreats are lovely and they're a beautiful
mm-hmm.
way for you to dedicate time to yourself and to connect with other people who are in a similar space. And that's lovely. But also, you don't need to spend thousands of dollars to go to a retreat to do this work either.
Yeah,
You can do it in the grass in your backyard or in the grass down at the lake near your house or,
yeah,
you know, in a forest or in a cave or anywhere that's nearby. I mean, they're all nature references, but nature is a pretty pivotal part.
yeah,
But you
yeah,
also can do it in like wrapped up in a blanket, in like snuggled with your dog in your house as well.
mm-hmm.
And so, like, it's not work where you need to be big and flashy at a retreat. If you want to, great, but it's certainly not a mandatory aspect. And I think that's something that
Yeah,
gets lost in translation for this stuff as well. It
totally
can be
agree. And I also
very,
think that
yeah,
you hit on, yeah, I think you
yeah,
hit on something really, really important, which is um, it just has to work for you,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I walking around the lake may not doesn't work for every, you know,
yeah,
and it's like literally sorting out your own replacement for church, quote
yeah,
unquote, and and you'll know when it works for you.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you'll just and that's you'll you'll know your yes, not your no.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't know
Yeah.
it now, that's okay. Even just like starting that
Hmm.
process of going like, I want to find that out or I want to be able to do that. That's that beginning of pulling that thread. And
Hmm.
yes, it can take time, but it's also insanely possible. And
Hmm.
it's not, this is not like a metaphorical thing that is only available to a certain subsect of people. It is
Yeah.
available to everybody. It just takes everybody a little bit of time, and depending on where you have come from and how you've landed where you are today, can depend on what that looks like. And
Hmm.
um, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's messy for everybody, but how messy it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But messy is also fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
okay, speaking of bookending, I typically end these episodes with something of the variety of a similar question, which is some encouragement or something for people listening. And so if you could offer just like one or two gentle invitations for people who are maybe wanting to connect with themselves a little bit more, what would those top things be?
Yeah. I think the first best place to start is your hobbies can be a really good indication of what of what that yes is, and a great place to start to understand yourself more. Like, why do I like this thing? Why do I like cycling? Why
Yeah.
do
Yeah, me
why do I
too.
like doing this? I don't know.
I don't know why people like
But
cycling either, but I'm sure you do.
it's a big thing here in Colorado, but it's not a big thing for me. But yeah, why do you like cycling? No. But I think hobbies are a really great first start into it. And I talk a little bit about this sometimes on my Instagram, is that that's a great place to start,
Mm,
maybe faux recreating some rituals in your life. Like, I love baking. And so
yeah.
anytime I really make a point to bake cookies before I go and meet with a certain group of people that I meet with pretty regularly. And it's like a little bit of love I get to bring and just
Yeah.
share, and I get to share something. And so that's something that I've I've actually created like a meaningful ritual. Like, I call it a ritual for myself because I want to, and versus just I'm making cookies.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think those are a really great window into some pieces that of who you are and what works for you, and tapping into some of what we talked about today in terms of connecting with your body and yourself.
Mm. I love that because it's a gateway, like, and it's a bridge with things that are already there and that are already happening potentially, as opposed to feeling like you need to add something new immediately or do
Mhm.
something brand new that's unfamiliar and foreign or strange. You're actually just starting with what you already know and what you already
Mhm.
love and enjoy. And that feels like a really nice, gentle, and safe way for people to start that process, which is lovely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for
Dig
joining
into more of
me.
what you like doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. This has been so fun. I
Yeah, it
really
went a little
enjoyed it.
chaotic, so I'm glad that you're totally fine with chaotic episodes.
Of course, whatever. I can roll
Oh,
with it.
oh, no, it has been so
Yeah.
fun. So thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing everything that you did and all the great questions. I had a really nice time.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Surface. If this episode resonated, challenged you, or named something you've struggled to put words to, I'm really glad you found your way here. You'll find ways to connect, learn more, and explore further in the show notes. As always, you are good, you have always been good, and your story matters always.